something is wrong. Maybe not dramatically wrong, maybe just the low-level kind. The uncertainty that won't resolve, the pressure that won't lift, the feeling that the ground beneath you is slightly less solid than it used to be. And then, out of nowhere, you find yourself thinking about a summer from 15 years ago. The smell of a specific house, the sound of a particular song, a friendship that felt effortless in a way nothing quite feels effortless anymore. You weren't trying to remember it. It just arrived, and for a moment, just a moment, something in your chest loosens. Why does that happen? Why specifically when things feel hard or uncertain, does your brain reach backward? The answer involves something far more sophisticated than simple escapism, and understanding it changes the way you experience both the stress and the nostalgia. Let's start with what stress actually does to the brain. When you're under sustained pressure or uncertainty, your threat detection system, centered in the amygdala, stays elevated. Your nervous system remains in a mild state of alert. And one of the things this does is create what psychologists call a need for psychological security, a deep drive to find something, anything that feels certain, stable, and safe. The stressed brain is essentially a brain searching for ground. And here's where nostalgia enters. Nostalgia, the word itself comes from the Greek nostos, meaning return home, and algos, meaning pain, is not simply pleasant reminiscing. Research led by psychologist Constantine Sedikides at the University of Southampton has been studying nostalgia for over 2 decades and has found something remarkable. Nostalgia is not a passive experience. It is an active psychological resource. When the brain reaches for a nostalgic memory, it is reaching for something specific, evidence that life has contained meaning, connection, warmth, and safety. Evidence that it can contain those things again. In other words, your brain doesn't reach for nostalgia because the present is hard. It reaches for nostalgia to remind itself that the present being hard is survivable. But here's where it gets genuinely interesting. Sedikides and his colleagues found that nostalgia does something measurable to the nervous system. People who were induced to feel nostalgic showed increased feelings of social connectedness, even when they were physically alone. Their sense of meaning in life increased. Their tolerance for uncertainty increased. Their anxiety in the short term decreased. Nostalgia wasn't helping them escape the stress. It was giving them the psychological resources to face it. Think about what that means. When you find yourself suddenly thinking about childhood summers, or an old friendship, or a version of life that felt simpler, your brain isn't giving up. It's refueling. It's going to the place where it stored its evidence that life is worth continuing through hard things, and it's bringing some of that evidence back with it into the present. And here's the part that nobody talks about. The memories nostalgia tends to surface are rarely random. Research consistently shows that nostalgic memories cluster around specific themes, moments of belonging, of being known, of security, of effortless joy. The brain doesn't pull up the difficult memories from the past during stress. It pulls up the ones that contain exactly what the present moment is missing, which means nostalgia is, in a very real sense, a diagnostic. It's showing you not just where you've been, it's showing you what you need. The person who keeps returning to memories of close, easy friendships during a period of loneliness is being told something. The person who keeps thinking about a childhood home during a period of instability is being told something. The person who keeps returning to a period when they felt genuinely free during a period of restriction and pressure, they're being told something too. The nostalgia isn't indulgent, it's informative. Now let's talk about why stress and uncertainty specifically trigger this response more than other emotional states. Psychologists have found that nostalgia functions as what they call a terror management resource, a way the mind copes with existential threat. When uncertainty is high, when the future feels genuinely unpredictable, the brain does something counterintuitive. Instead of planning forward, which requires certainty it doesn't have, it consolidates backward. It anchors itself in a past that has already happened, that cannot be taken away, that is by definition certain. The past is the only thing that is completely certain. It already occurred. And in times when the future feels like anything but certain, the brain instinctively moves toward the one territory where certainty is guaranteed. Let's be honest about something. There's a version of nostalgia that isn't serving you. When reminiscing becomes rumination, when the return to the past is driven not by comfort seeking, but by a belief that the past was better and the present is permanently worse. That's a different psychological process. Research distinguishes between restorative nostalgia, which uses the past as fuel for the present, and what some psychologists call reflective nostalgia, which can tip into a kind of grief for what's gone. The former builds you up. The latter, in excess, can keep you stuck. But here's what's fascinating about where most nostalgic episodes land. Studies show that the vast majority of nostalgic experiences end not with sadness, but with a quiet sense of continuity, the feeling that the self who existed in that memory and the self existing now are the same person, that there is a through line, that something essential has survived everything that has happened in between, and that feeling of continuity, of an essential self that persists through change, is one of the most psychologically stabilizing things a human being can experience, especially during periods when everything around them is shifting, especially when the future is uncertain, especially when the ground beneath them feels less solid than it used to. Because what nostalgia is ultimately saying isn't, go back. It's saying, you have been here before, in places that felt like home, in moments that felt like belonging, in versions of life that felt worth living. And you can build that again. Not the same version, a new one, but built from the same essential material. The mind craves nostalgia during stress, not because it is weak, but because it is wise enough to know where its evidence lives. If this explains something you've been feeling without quite having words for it, subscribe to Brain Decoded. And the next time your mind reaches backward during a hard season, let it. It knows what it's looking for.